Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for joining me for another episode of our podcast, Hikayti Hikaya. Uh, Today, I am joined by Abdullah Humaidan, who is a lecturer right now at the Department of Linguistics at the University of Illinois in the United States. Dr. Abdul Samad Humaidan, of course, is he's from Yemen, living currently in the United States. So he taught academic English language courses at the Center for English as a Second Language at Southern Illinois University. Currently is a PhD candidate as well, majoring in language literacies and culture, TESOL, at the University of Southern Illinois in the United States again, where he also pursued before that an MA in TESOL. Right, Abd Samad?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Yes, from 2012 to 2014. And that was part of a scholarship that he won, the most important, I think, scholarship given to foreign students by the Department of States, which called the Fulbright Foreign Student Scholarship. So he's a Fulbrighter. So before that, before the scholarship, of course, he graduated with a degree in English and translation in 2007 from the University of Science and Technology in Taz in Yemen. Abdul Samad, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start from Yemen, where you have, of course, graduated with a degree in English and translation. And I'm very curious to know how have you become interested in the English language?
Sure. Starting from middle school, when I was in sixth grade in Yemen, you start learning English from seventh grade to 12th grade. And during those years, I had a positive experience with English language teachers. So I still remember till today, from seventh grade, teacher Nasser, who taught me in seventh grade English. And the way he was teaching English is more called the direct method. He used English most of the time in the classroom. There wasn't a lot of Arabic. It was just that direct teaching of the language itself. He was also effective in the way he taught the class in terms of the methods, making it easy for you to understand, but also to be able to do activities and understand him. As you know, when we learn new language, no matter how much linguistic you hear, it's not clear what the person is talking about.
Sure.
And that's where teacher Nasser did the best. And then I moved into eighth grade, and I had teacher Ahmed Mudhish, who happened to came to the US, got like a year at that time. It was more kind of teacher training. And again, he came to the US and got like a lot of teaching experience. I came back to Yemen and I studied with him. In ninth grade, I studied with teacher Nashwan Al-Ariqi. And as you can see, I remember...
You remember all the names of your teachers. This is wonderful.
Indeed.
I'm like, you are going through them like, this is my teacher, and then the name of the other, and then the third. My God. I don't remember their names. I remember their faces very well, but I don't remember their names. This is wonderful.
Thank you. You know, it's always the positive impact that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
teachers
How
make on our
before
lives.
you tell me about this last teacher, this third teacher, do you think that because I hear that a lot whenever I ask someone, how did you come to become interested in the English language when you were a teenager or a kid? They always, or not always, but most of them talk about a very positive experience that they had with one teacher who influenced them in one way or another. So do you think that this puts responsibility on the teachers, and that this is what learning a language is about, a foreign language, I mean?
Thank you. Yes, that's indeed. As you know, when we go through the learning experience in schools, the teachers who put positive impact in our experience of learning are those people who, as you said, like stick in our minds for a long time. And I
Mhm.
believe when a teacher is passionate about their uh, teaching, when they are passionate about helping others to see their potentials, I
Mhm.
think that what makes the difference. And that's what I
Yes.
feel my experience has been.
So your third teacher, you will tell me about your third
Yes.
teacher. How did
Thank
he influence you or impact you? Yeah.
So teacher Nashwan Al-Ariqi, who taught me ninth grade, and ninth grade in Yemen is one of the 2 years, like ninth grade and 12th grade, the final year test and exams are national tests that comes like from central Ministry of Education in the country. So he was also, again, he had his experience. He went to Liverpool in the UK, and
Hmm.
then he got some experience, came back, and again, it's also that teaching. And
Hmm.
finishing ninth grade, and through those 3 years, I was doing well in school. It's not just English, it was also like with the other subjects. And then I moved into
Hmm.
high school, and again, it was like other teachers. I had Ustad Muhammad Al Adib. Ustad Muhammad Al Adib had a long experience, and I had also Ustad Najib Al Mawadim, and that
Hmm.
was 11th grade. And then in 12th grade, I had teacher Fuad Al Aswadi. And all of them, as you can see, those are long time experienced educators who really spent much of their time helping students before me to just excel and move forward in their lives. So
Sure.
that positive experience reinforced the idea of the value of learning a language, opening my mind into new word, into a new perspective, into a new way of thinking about other nations, countries, and people.
Was teaching English ever in your mind when you were a kid? Like, was this your dream or something that you uh, wanted to become? That is a teacher. I see your undergraduate degree is in English and translation. So, what was the dream?
The dream was to be a doctor like my father. My father did his undergrad and grad in medicine,
A
and
doctor, you mean in medicine?
in medicine. Yeah, he was a
Okay.
physician. Yes,
Okay.
he was a physician who was actually at the beginning of his experience, he was a cardiovascular surgeon.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I think, let me correct that. He was a surgeon, not the cardiovascular. Cardiovascular was my dream. So my father
Mhm.
did his undergrad and grad in Russia, studied medicine, and I grew
Mm.
up seeing my father having that goal and vision of serving people.
Mm.
So you grew up, you see a model in your life, and you start building up your model. You start up
Mhm.
building up
Sure.
your vision. It
Sure.
was my vision to be like my father, a doctor
Mm.
one day. But then in Yemen, because of the national test, and to be qualified to go into medicine school, you need a minimum of 85. But at that time, I got 80. So I
Mm.
was like short 5 points. 5 points in the GPA was fine to get me in all colleges except medicine.
Medicine.
So yes, so only medicine, that was not the like choice. I was able to apply to all majors, but not medicine. So I was thinking at that time to again retake the year again, but then I had conversations with my father and mom at that time, and they give me the choice. They said, if you would like to just retake the year, it's up to you. But we thought you're doing well, and you can still do whatever you would like. I mean, to study any majors. I got that for a time. I thought about that, and then I ended up deciding. I mean, it was a stressful year. It's
Sure.
12th grade. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. I was like, I think it was enough for that time. When you're like 18 and 19, that's really enough.
Mm.
So, and then during that year in Yemen, we have something called the gap year. When you finish high school, you need to wait a year before you start applying for universities, so you can start your
Oh,
undergrad. Yes. So you cannot
I
join
see.
directly unless if you decide to join a private university, you can do that. But for public
Mhm.
universities, that
Mhm.
was the choice. Okay. So then during that year, I continued to take some classes in English and intensive programs. And that also, again, helped me when it was the time to apply for college. I thought at that time English was very close to me because I had been doing well. Why not to continue into the same major, into the same
I
area? Because that becomes easier. So I thought that was a good idea. I did. I applied for English, and that was at Taiz University. Taiz University is a public school, public university. I mean, and then we were required to take a placement test. And I still remember at that year, almost 400 people were applying for only 70 seats, like 70, but 400 people were competing. And it was
Mm.
like, it was like again another experience. You're like, would I be able to get admitted or not? And that was like, it's,
Mm. Yeah. This
yeah.
is a very small number.
Yes, I mean, it's like a small chance. The probability choice is small. I ended up applying, taking the placement test, and the results, the list of 70 people who got admitted was released. I was very happy to see my
Mm.
name number 14 from the top.
Mm.
And that was
I
a
bet.
kind of another like booster of your self-confidence, of helping you to succeed. And that was also good. And I still remember at that time there was also like one of the names on the top 14 people was one of the top 10 students in my year in high school. So that was,
Mm.
I felt again, that was good to, oh, someone who was like one of the top 10 in the entire country in high school is also with the group.
Mm.
I started there.
So that would lead me to a question there about
Mhm.
English in Yemen. What's the position of English in Yemen as a foreign language? What's the history of the English language in Yemen as a foreign language? For example, in the Maghreb region where I live, that is in the Maghreb countries, French is predominant.
Mhm.
Because of the French colonial history, but I was wondering what's the position of English as a foreign language in Yemen. When do people start taking English classes at public schools? Do they is English the medium of instruction at the university? Is it used in business or not? So tell me a little bit about that. I'm very curious, so that I can build the full picture about your choice, then your current status now as a lecturer at the Department of Linguistics in the United States, in Illinois, and English in Yemen. Yeah, yeah. Please tell me about that.
Sure. I think it's interesting because you mentioned something about colonization. The southern part of Yemen was colonized by the Great Britain, and it was for a while. And that was, I think, that was also a part of what brought English into also more popularity in the country. So I
Hmm.
think that's also something, as you know, the colonization brings with them. Is the language, the culture, and their practice of like education sometimes, and so on. So that's also a part of the history of the country. The southern part of Yemen was colonized by Great Britain for a while.
Mhm.
And then when they left, you know, many people who were in the southern Yemen, and they were traveling to many went to UK or Canada, and they were pursuing either their undergrads or grad studies. And there are, my understanding, there are a number of them either finished graduate school and came back, and they are faculty and at universities. So then I think that's also a kind of the glamorous way of the learning and teaching that was happening with English. Regarding English in
Mhm.
business, it depends because, as you know, now we live in a globalization atmosphere where
Mhm.
a lot of communication happening in languages in other than Arabic, which is the first language in Yemen. Then that brings the idea a lot of people need to learn English, so then people can communicate and build up some of those relationships about business. So that's
Sure.
also about business, colonization, business. And then you mentioned something, I forgot that. Do you mind to?
Uh, I also wanted to know, is it the medium of instruction at the university?
It depends on the majors, like my understanding.
Medicine, for example.
Huh? I think
Medicine, for example, that you wanted to have to pursue a degree in medicine. Is it do they use English to teach it, or what
I
do you?
think I think the textbooks are in English, and the teaching and the instruction can be a combination of English and Arabic because, as you
Arabic,
know,
yeah, I
yeah, it could be
understand.
both because there is the uniqueness of technicality of terms in medicine. So then, as a professor at a university, you're expected, even if you're teaching in English, to give the Arabic equivalent so students who are taking medicine can function when they're learning, but also when they finish, as they will go and be in contact with patients who speak Arabic.
I see. I see. Now, how would you, from your own living experience in Yemen and looking at it now as a professional who is a professional in TESOL, how would you evaluate, assess, how do you regard, how do you see English in Yemen? I see, for example, let me give you an
Mhm,
example with Algeria.
mhm,
Right now, it's in a better position than it was 10 years ago because we have English now is at primary school
mhm,
since 2 years. It was only at middle school and high school. Now it's we have English in our primary schools.
mhm,
It has gained a lot of popularity. Now you see a lot of adults learning English for the first time, and you see it more and more in business. So, how would you evaluate, assess the position of English now in terms of use and in terms of proficiency?
Sure. I think I see English language learning and teaching in Yemen is a project in progress, meaning
Mm,
it's always the idea of evolving. When I was learning English in Yemen, as I said at the beginning, it was about the direct method, the idea of learning English within an English practice into the classroom. But also
mm.
at the same time, there was a lot of English teaching through grammar translation method.
Grammar, yeah.
Yes, and
Same,
grammar.
same everywhere, and same in Algeria and in the Arab world, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, as you
Mhm.
know, that was also one of the dominant teaching methods.
Yeah.
It happened like in 60s of the last century, and then it was yes, there was a lot of that, and that's why uh, from my experience, when a lot of Yemeni students finish high school,
Mhm.
the English language score might not be at the same level of other subjects. So talking about,
Sure.
for example, science, or like if you're doing science section, so you will do chemistry, biology, and physics. Those are like science.
Mhm.
Science sometimes it's needs a lot of studying, a lot of attention, but also it's the idea, as much as you can study, you can succeed. But with English, it's also the idea of building up. So sometimes you cannot catch up when it's
Mhm.
like level 6, and if a student couldn't master what you said, like about the language proficiency, using the language for 3 4 years, and the expectation at this point you function at a specific level, it becomes challenging. But
Sure.
thank you for mentioning that, because that's also one of the aspects I hope to be able to serve Yemen, and also the
Yeah, exactly.
MENA.
And this is why I basically asked you that question as a professional. It was in a backhanded way. Um, how can we, as professionals, help our youth, especially, but also our country in general,
Mhm.
become better in terms of mastering this foreign language in particular, but also in terms of developing and improving teaching methods.
Mhm.
That
Indeed.
basically was my question, and I hope that that basically would be, of course, the general theme of our podcast today.
Mhm.
So, moving now from your undergraduate, of course, you applied and won the foreign student Fulbright scholarship, which is quite a big deal. So, how did that come about? How did you become interested in this particular scholarship? How did you apply? How did you win? And then where did you study, etc. So, can you tell me briefly about your experience with the Fulbright scholarship, which is quite an important scholarship because people from all over the world apply for this particular scholarship. Um, 2 weeks ago, I was talking to an Algerian student now um, studying TESOL in Vermont, in the
Mhm.
north of the United States. And she, of course, related to me her experience in um, applying for then, of course, her first 6 months studying as a Fulbrighter. So, can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Yes, sure. So that comes from the experience in the undergrad. As I started in studying the program English language, it was English and literature at Taiz University. I finished the first semester. I was, I think, the 10th or the ninth again on the list of the class in terms of GPA. And then I thought, like, studying, like the first year, most of the time you learn these skills like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But
Yeah.
then when you moved
Mhm.
more like as a senior, a junior, and a senior, you do most of the time literature. I was asking myself if I was much interested in literature. I realized I might be interested more in other fields, but not literature. And that what made me moving from Taiz University to University of Science and Technology. So in
Mm.
science and technology, they have English language program, English and translation. And their program included 13 translation courses. You study
Mm.
like third year, fourth year, and you focused on translation, almost like
Mhm.
three translation classes.
Mhm.
I moved there. I studied. I started from second year. When you said like, when did you realize you would like to be a teacher? It was from the second year when I started. In the University of Science and Technology, I was asking myself, I would love to be a professor at a university one day. And from
Mm.
there,
So that
it
became the new dream then. That
correct.
became the new ambition.
Indeed. And that's why it was like, if it's not medicine, so I can make it as a professor at university. So second year, third year, fourth year, I finished undergrad. I was the top on my group. And at that time, I started applying to teach at the same university. I did. And I was offered to teach general English classes for undergrads, for students of level one. That's English 101, English 102. Those are like, again, um, language requirements by the university. It was a great experience. At the same time, to continue doing a professional growth in terms of learning the language. There was in Yemen a newsletter called Yemen Times. It
Mm.
was the first one established in Yemen in English, in terms of it's all in English. But what caught my attention is also they started adding a supplemental material for educational purposes. For example, and you wouldn't believe me, I still have all of those. I'm talking
You
about
do.
2004, 2005.
My
It's
God.
almost like 20 years ago, but I still have them.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah. So I still have the materials, the educational materials. I used to buy that regularly and start learning new vocabulary, underlining new terms, and so on. Fulbright came as into that news letter for me to remember. But also, when I was an undergrad in the first year, there was someone who came as from the recruiting team for Fulbright and talked about Fulbright. So
Mhm.
when I was 19, I heard about Fulbright, but that was my first time. Finished
Mhm.
undergrad, I was reading Yemen Times and I was seeing their announcement about the scholarship. The first time you see the announcement, you start thinking, do I would do I want to apply? And then you start asking yourself, am I qualified enough? And then you start thinking, why not? Give it a try. The first year, second year, third year, and then because they ask for the TOEFL test as one of the application requirements. The third year, I was like, I should do something. And I went to
Mm.
Sana'a. I live in Taiz. I went to Sana'a and I took the TOEFL test, and I said, remember, I got a good grade that meet their requirement. And then it was May 2011. And then it was a time for the application. They opened the application, and I still remember I attended a session about Fulbright at Amid East in Sana'a. And they give all of those details about the application, about the requirements, and so on. The requirements were one of the important ones, two, three. One of them is you had a minimum of B minus, which is 80 and above in your undergrad for GPA. You have teaching, you have experience in your field, and then
Mhm.
you submit CVs, statement of purpose, and then recommendation letters.
Mm.
And all of those were
You had
available.
all of these. Yeah.
Yes. And even like for my undergrad, like for the GPA, I still remember I had 92 as an
Mm.
accumulative, 92% as an accumulative GPA. I said, okay, so now I have the TOEFL test. I have all of the requirements. Let me go ahead and get started. I
Mm.
submitted all of the applications, and I was, it's at the time of waiting. That's an interesting time. And I was like, hopefully, I was keeping my fingers crossed. They will call me for like, they do an interview. Because
Interview.
first, yes, the first thing they do, they screen all of the applications, and then they invite semi-finalists for interviews.
Mm.
I remember receiving the call, but I was a little bit busy, and I didn't realize it was a call for Emily's. And then
Mm.
I finished. I don't remember what I was doing, and then I saw the call from Emily's. I went ahead and called them, and I was like, hopefully that was a good news. I was informed that I'm invited for the interview.
Interview.
Yes, it was interesting, and I got ready. I did a mock interview. I still remember till today, I
Oh.
and that was like
You-
personal.
So you prepared for this seriously.
Indeed, and I still remember
Mm.
dressing up like this, like putting a
Mm.
tie, standing in front of a mirror, asking myself some questions that I would have expected. And then again, I traveled from Taiz to Sana'a, and there is
Mm.
always a lot of traveling. I traveled to Sana'a, attended the interview, and they said, I still remember the committee. One of the questions I asked them at the end, because they ask you some questions, and
Mhm.
then they let you know you can ask us a question. And then I asked them uh, regarding the final selections. I
Mhm.
know almost most of people who applied are meeting the minimum requirements.
Mm.
How about the selection, like the final? And I still remember the person who was from the US embassy said, we look at the entire package. We look at the GPA. We look at the like the recommendation letters. We look at the interview, the personality, who we see can thrive and succeed in their
Mm.
experience in the US. And I don't know why I felt good hearing that response, though. I mean, he didn't say anything about selecting me, but I felt good. I was like,
Yes.
hopefully I got selected. And
You
then
you you did you feel like you were like the 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 term they use in literature, for example, is that you are rounded. You have the whole package, in fact.
thank you. That's kind of you. I felt good, though. When there is an interview committee,
Mhm.
they might be careful not to say things that be understood differently. And then
Mhm.
finished the interview, left, and then one day I was teaching again. I was teaching, and I got a call from Amethyst again, and I was really nervous. I was like, hopefully that's the good news, because my understanding at the time, you will get a call for both. Either you get a
Mm.
call, accepted, or you get a call, please come to take your application materials. I was like, which one?
Oh,
Yeah.
would
I
they
was
do
like,
that?
I mean, if because like a lot of materials, why they will stay there. Okay,
Mm.
so picked up the call, and I was just informed, congratulations, you have been
Oh
selected
my
for
God.
Fulbright.
How
It
did you
was,
feel?
I mean, it was
You still
turning
remember
point.
that day, I am sure.
Indeed, indeed.
Ah,
I was at the university teaching, and I
yeah,
was
yeah,
at
yeah.
the office. It was really an inspiring, I mean, inspirational time in
Sure,
life.
sure.
Yes.
I
So
can
that's
only
the
imagine,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So that's the experience of applying. But then after that, you are asked to take the TOEFL test again. You are asked to take the GRE. You are asked to do the applications and apply for universities. And that took almost like almost 10 months from July 11,
Yes.
2011 to July 2012.
Mm. So you almost here. Then how? Of course, in this year also you have to um, choose and decide where to go in the United States,
Yes.
what to study there.
Mhm.
So, how did that come about? How did you choose Illinois? Then, of course, TESOL. Perhaps TESOL is just a natural choice
Mhm.
given your background as an undergraduate in English, and then you were, of course, studying teaching, sorry, English at the university. So I guess that was just a natural continuation of your aspirations to become a teacher and a lecturer at the university, right?
Thank you. Because at that time, I was able to choose to do translation for
Mm,
my master's and PhD. But because, as what you said, you put it beautifully. It was the idea of, oh, if I had that long experience of teaching, why not continue as a
mm,
teacher?
I see.
Yes. And that's where, I mean, when I went in the application, they ask you for the major. When you go for the interview, you already
Mhm.
know what major you would like to study, because they ask you some questions about the interview. That was about the major. Why Illinois? I still remember,
Mm,
and that's interesting. One of the members in the committee was a previous Fulbrighter,
okay.
okay, who did his master's degree in the US and came back to Yemen. And then,
I think they always do that, right? They put
yes,
someone who has been a Fulbrighter, right?
correct.
Uh, yeah, to ask the right questions.
Hmm. Indeed.
Okay,
Yeah, because
okay.
you went through that experience, so you can ask questions.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
then after like the interview, after the selection, you got admitted, and then there was a gathering with the cultural attaché of the US embassy in Yemen. And I met the same person. And the same person was also at that time pursuing a PhD in English at Sana'a University. And we were
Mhm.
talking, and he was asking me, I mean, so I said, remember, you were planning for TESOL? I said, yeah. And I asked him, which university did you go? And he said, oh, I went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. I was like, how was your experience? He said, it was great. And I thought, if someone had a good experience at a specific school, why
Sure.
not apply for it? And that
Mm.
was also my second choice. It was like they asked you for four choices, and
Okay.
Southern Illinois was my second choice because there was someone who had a good experience there. And that was my choice. And that's why I applied. And I still remember, I think I got two admissions and then I ended up choosing to come to Southern Illinois. And since I came to the US, Illinois has been home for me.
Yeah, so you won the scholarship, chose Illinois, chose
Yes.
TESOL, and then
Mm.
you went to the United States and started, of course, your TESOL there, your MA in TESOL. So how was your experience as a student first? I'm curious to know about. I always ask this question to people who immigrate to the United States to study, because I'm very curious about how were the first few days and few months and even perhaps few years in the United States in comparison to their home country, in terms of the differences, first of all, in the living conditions, and then, of course, the differences, and that's what I'm always curious about, differences in terms of their studies back home and the American university system or higher education system.
Sure. I mean, I said, like the first few days or like the first few weeks is a mixture of emotions of excitement, anxiety, uncertainty, and exploration. All of those feelings,
Mm,
you live them like
sure.
few hours.
So
You're
tell me about
excited.
each.
Yeah,
Tell me
thank you.
about each.
So
Mm,
the first, like as I said, you start with the excitement because this is a new step in your life, and you are moving
mm.
into a new
It's a
state.
dream, basically.
Indeed, yes. So you are moving into like a new country. You are going to the US. So you are studying in a US university. So you are meeting people from the US and the globe. And it's all of those excitements of a new experience, a new chapter in your life. So that's the excitement. Anxiety, it's always the question. You need to think of your new life with the
Sure.
idea of meeting people, with learning, with education, with food, with housing, with making connections, making new friends. And then it comes also the idea of exploration. So you're exploring new things in your life. Can you imagine? I mean, you're moving into a new country. Everything is new. The weather is new.
Mm,
Housing system is new. The educational system is new. The food is new most of the time. Everything is new, and it's a game. So that makes you excited, a little bit anxious. Will I be able to love all of that, some of that, and how to cope? So that was like the beginning, and it's just learning how to accept all of those experiences and feelings and move
and
forward.
talking about that, how was um, the transition into the American educational system or higher educational system? What differences have you right from the start noticed about the way you were studying in Yemen
Mhm.
and the new way in which you were studying in the United States? Were your expectations met, or were there things that surprised you, perhaps, so that our listeners and viewers would have a better, um, let's say, better idea
Mhm.
about what to expect
Mhm.
when they want to study in the United States, and especially if they apply for the foreign student Fulbright scholarship.
Sure. I mean, I came from an educational system in Yemen where there is a lot of dependence and weight on exams and testing.
Mm,
You have
mm,
a midterm exam, 30 points, attendance 10 points, and 60 points for final exams. So there is a heavy weight on testing. You come to the US, it's not necessarily the same. Used in Yemen, in the experience, you do midterm and final. So technically, those are the few weeks you will be really busy. You come to the US and your experience is from the beginning to the end. You do a lot of reading, you do critical thinking, you write small papers, small projects, you are active in the classroom, you give presentations about projects you do, and sometimes there are exams, there are sometimes quizzes, there are a combination of both. So it's not just exams and tests, it's
Mm.
how the entire
So
experience.
there is more focus on the less focus first on the summative and more focus on the formative, right?
Correct. That's right. Yeah, the learning experience itself. So it's not
Yeah,
just the test, as you said, like summative exams and testing, rather than the learning process happening. And that's
I
the
see.
idea, the process.
If you compare the two, um, let's say in terms of number, do
Mhm.
you have a big number in the Yemeni classes at the university? Do you have a big number that would administration and the students to focus more on the summative exam, on the final exam? And in your opinion, is it because, for example, in most American MA programs, the number is very limited? Usually it's no more than, I think, 15, 10 people. That's all. And that would allow for this continuous evaluation and make it easier. Whereas when you have a class and you have taught at um, Yemeni universities, I don't know, do you have large classes, small classes? That is, in terms of comparing, where is that more convenient to do the summative or the formative?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I agree the number plays a role, but it's not always the case. Because I said a
Okay.
minute, like, I mean, the graduate school also, like, if you're pursuing a master's degree in Yemen, the number might be also a small number, like 10 to 15, 20
Oh,
maximum people. But also when you come
okay.
into the US, it's also going to be around that number or in between. It could be like
Mm.
a class of 20 or 30, 40 people. It could be, but it might not reach that big number because of the different
Oh,
educational.
if the maximum is 30, then it's not a big, large class anyway. So it's not in terms of really the number playing a role, it's
Mm,
more cultural,
correct.
like this over reliance that we have in
Hmm.
the Arab world in general.
Hmm.
It seems to me, from my different discussions with professionals around the Maghreb region, from Egypt and now
Hmm.
from Yemen, seems to be like a cultural thing. This idea of, in terms of learning and teaching English, the grammar translation method, and learning by heart, and preparing for the final exam. This seems to be like something cultural that characterizes the Arab world and the region in general. Do you think so, from your different discussions with expatriates there in the United States, and where you are, and you have different discussions with people who come from all over the world, and especially from the Arab world?
Sure. So what you said really has merit. Yes, there is always the idea of what you said about the educational system and how, like in Yemen, for example, or in many countries in the MENA area, there is a big weight on exams and testing. But here in the US, at least in my experience, the experience of learning, it's not what is the number, what is the test, what is the grade you just got into that course or class that will make you move forward. It's the learning process that helps you to understand and better learning about this subject, but also how you can apply those skills into other areas in
I
your
see.
experience. Yeah.
I see. I see. That's, I think, very important. And for you, growing up in this system in Yemen, where it's the final exam, where it's the mark, which is the most important thing,
Yeah.
where it's what you learn in class, you should put in your exam paper. Where I guess I'm just saying if it is the same with our system, where if it is the same, I'm not judging here, where the what you learn in class has nothing to do with what you experience outside of the class.
And
Growing up in this system
mhm,
and being in this system, how was the transition to a totally different system in the United States, based, as you said, on experience, on applying what you learn in the classroom to different things outside the classroom, on building skills, on formative assessment, on the reading list that never ends,
mhm,
on the
mhm,
writing assignments that you spend many nights preparing and writing and drafting and then submitting, and
mhm.
to all of these things that come in a very intensive way, sometimes without any kind of preparation. You are just put into that when you win the scholarship.
Thank you. So, and that's real. I mean, like the first semester for me, also during my master's degree, the learning curve was really deep, because as you said,
Mm,
you grow up in a specific like educational practice, and then you move into a new experience for you. And I still remember, like many of my friends, I would expect also many students who come to the US to pursue higher education degrees, you will live days in the library, literally.
mm,
So you will live days. And I still remember I said that to multiple friends who came after me, and they did. And I still remember, like, the day of their graduations, they would remind me, oh, I still remember you said it will happen. I will live days in the library, and it happened. Because you
yeah,
really need to try to learn more skills that maybe some of your colleagues grew up learning them gradually. So at this
that's what
time
I'm
of,
saying.
yeah, at this time
Mm,
of their school life as graduate students, they have learned all of those skills for so many years. And now,
sure, sure. They have a head start. They
mhm,
have a head start over you, whereas you have to do this like intensively
mhm,
over a short period of time.
yes,
And the problem, talking to so many students,
mhm,
people who have um, one different scholarship, not necessarily the Fulbright scholarship, not
mhm,
necessarily in the United States, some people in
mhm,
Europe,
mhm,
in Britain, for example. The idea that you get, that you have in your head when you win a scholarship, is that you are going on a vacation. That is, you are going to the United States, you are going to um, spend your time shopping and going through cities and doing this. And then they are shocked when they spend most of their time uh, at the library.
you're right. And that's also like a key thing. If the plan was for vacation, uh, I am sorry, it's not going to be the best. Sorry, if that was the goal. But then if the goal was to come and learn, and there would be sometimes, as you said, like in vacations,
Of
in
course,
summer, in over winter
of course.
breaks, you can travel, you can do shopping,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely.
Sure.
But as you said, like,
I
I mean,
I
it's
think I think Yeah, I think it's very important to say that. I mean,
Mhm,
part of the reason why I do these discussions with people who have traveled outside of their countries and studied
mhm,
or worked outside or are working or studying outside abroad is to really give the young people in their countries now uh, the an idea about what it is like to study abroad, what it is like to
mhm,
work abroad, so that
mhm.
it's not to encourage them or to dissuade them from working or studying abroad, but it's for them to adjust their expectations. That is, you should, in my opinion, have very realistic expectations and adjust your expectations to reality. That is, if you apply for a scholarship, you win the scholarship. The thing that you are going to do there is study for this scholarship because this is why
Okay.
you were given this money.
Mhm. And that's also like a big thing. And as you said, like the idea of winning the scholarship, as you will go there and do your best, I mean, to continue growing professionally, intellectually, academically. That's also a key. And that's why uh, you travel, you go outside of your comfort zone or where you grew up to learn and to be a
Sure.
better version of yourselves. And that's also like a key.
So, so now, going into the scholarship, you started, of course, studying. So, how did it go and how did it end? Tell me
Sure.
about that. The two
So
years.
the 2 years were great. They were nice. As I said, like the first semester was really living in the library for many days. You will take a class, you will go to the library, do some reading, preparing for the other class, doing writing, doing assignment, doing project, maybe preparing for a quiz, that you have a presentation, you work in a team, doing team projects and work. So you do all of those. So that's the entire semester. So that was the first semester, the first year, the second year. It was really investing time to take classes that serves you. And I think I listed those classes I took during grad school on my faculty page about the classes I did, like teaching vocabulary, teaching reading, teaching writing, teaching listening and
Mm,
speaking, phonetics and phonology, sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, and then you understand the language and the psychology aspect of learning a language. So you invest time, you invest energy, and then you start feeling the positive impact and difference in your experience as a learner, as a professional, and learning from others who have been growing in the US or out of the US. Because, as you know, in the US, there is like in many universities, the diverse, environment where a lot of students coming from many countries, and then you learn from others about their cultures, about their practices, their teachings, their professional lives. Those were again great 2 years. You do a lot of studying, a lot of intellectual academic growth, but also, as you mentioned, I did some traveling, visited some other states, did some little
sure.
shopping.
Sure. Yeah, that's part of the experience, and that's very important as well because these student exchange programs are meant to be that exchange programs, that is for you to experience what it is like to study and live in the United States. That's why I asked you about the living conditions, but
Yes.
also for you to bring to the American citizens there, and this is the part of the objective and goal of the Department of State, is to bring people from all over the world in order to go into the United States and then travel here and there inside the United States, and for the American citizens to be exposed to other people from many different parts of the world. So, yeah, that's, I think, very important. Now, your MA, did you have a dissertation at the end? Did you present? Did you submit or defend your um, um, MA dissertation? And what was it about?
Sure. So for the MA program where I studied, you had the option and choice to do non-thesis option or thesis option. And I did non-thesis option during the master's degree. I focused on taking more classes as a professional because, as a teacher, you're always thinking how you can continue to develop and improve your teaching methods and ways. So I did non-thesis option.
Okay, non-thesis. And in the non-thesis option, you go into the classes, right?
You take more classes, more
You take
courses
more
instead.
classes. Okay.
Yes.
Did you have the experience of teaching
Uh,
during those 2 years?
yes. There was a course called Practicum, which is the practical teaching experience, where the idea of there was a group of students, and we, as a group of teachers, we used to teach like 1 week. And because we were 12, we do teaching 12 weeks. That's the entire semester. It was only that time for 1 week for that course. But then when, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you taught Arabic or not. No.
At that time for this course, I taught English, but also I taught
Mhm.
Arabic for undergrads and grads in the
Ah,
university. It was another experience.
not
Yes.
the experience. So carry on. Tell me about that experience first.
Sure.
The first one. Yeah.
Yes. So while like the second year of my master's degree, there was an opening in the department because it's a department of linguistics. They were asking for something called a graduate teaching assistant, meaning if you are studying a graduate degree in the program, you can apply for to teach your language. And at that time, it
Mhm.
was Arabic. So I applied and I was offered to teach one section, one group of undergrads and grad students. Those were domestic students from the US who spoke English as their first language, and I taught them Arabic.
But I'm curious to know. I heard about this, but I never asked anybody. What is it like to teach Arabic in the United States to native speakers of English? What is it? What is it like?
it's it's again, as a teacher, as an educator professional, it's another great experience because at this time, instead of teaching English, which was my second language, now I'm teaching my first language. And
Hmm.
then what you are learning to teach, like in English, the methodologies, the strategies, the techniques, you use them to teach now Arabic. It was, I mean, the good thing also, the group I taught, it was only 6 students, and it was easier to interact with them and to help them to learn Arabic and to speak Arabic. And one of the interesting things and the highlights of teaching Arabic, I still remember when we were like finishing the year, first semester, second semester, and it was almost like the last class. And the interesting thing is everybody started saying, "Oh, by the way, what is your real English name?" Why is that? Because at the beginning, I brought like a raffle of Arabic names, and each person was picking a raffle piece, and that name in Arabic becomes their name. So they knew each
Ah,
other the entire year by their Arabic names, but not their real English names. And
so
I
this was a real immersive experience.
indeed, and that
We have
was a
to
highlight.
we have to for this part of the podcast. I think we have to switch to talking in Arabic, you and me, for just like 2 minutes.
أكيد.
كيف كانت التجربة هذه تاع تدريس اللغة العربية للأمريكيين؟ لأنه طول عمري سمعت بهذا
مهم.
التجربة هذه من خلال بعض الأساتذة اللي شفتهم راحوا من الجزائر إلى الولايات المتحدة، ولكني عمري ما كانت عندي الفرصة باش يعني نسألهم على التجربة تاعهم. كيف كانت التجربة تاعك؟ يعني هل كنت تدرس، كنت تحكي في البودكاست بالإنجليزية كي بدينا، انه الاستاذ تاعك في المدرسه كان يستعمل الدايركت ميثود اللي هي الطريقه المباشره، انه يحكي باللغه اللغه الانجليزيه داخل القسم. هل هذا ممكن مع الامريكيين انك تستعمل غير اللغه العربيه في القسم وتبدا تحكي باللغه العربيه، ولا هذا غير ممكن؟ يعني لازم بالاشياء
أنا شكرا انك ذكرت هذا الكلام، لاني لما درست عربي كمان استخدمت اللي هو الدايركت تيتشنج ميثود. انا كنت ادرس عربي واستخدم اللغه العربيه في داخل الفصل في كل وقت، ولهذا كان اي طالب الاحظ انه مثلا مش قادر يستوعب الفكره، او كانت الفكره شويه صعبه عليه، ممكن استخدم صوره، ممكن استخدم
مم.
شكل، ممكن استخدم اللي هو الرياليا، اللي هو مثلا اذا كنت اتكلم عن المفتاح اخرج المفتاح من جيبي واريهم
مم.
المفتاح واخليهم يشوفوا المفتاح. فكنت استخدم اللي هو الدايركت تيتشنج ميثود، وكانت تجربه رائعه. والامريكان حتى هم الطلاب اللي كانوا في فصلي كانوا فعلا متشوقين انهم يعرفوا عن اللغه العربيه، بس كذلك على ثقافتنا العربيه.
صح.
فلهذا مثلا بعض الايام كان الفصل ادرس يوم الاثنين والاربعاء والجمعه، فبعض الاحيان يوم الجمعه البس الثوب اليمني، والبس الكوت واحط
مم.
الشال واروح ادرس
إيه، ما شاء
الفصل.
الله.
اي نعم. من ثقافتي اللي هو ملبسي ولبسي وكيف انه اعيش ثقافتي في داخل الفصل كذلك. فاعتقد انه حتى بعض الاحيان كنا نتكلم عن الاكل، واتذكر حتى مره من المرات ربما كان في فكره اكل يمني او شيء، ما اذكرش هل كان احد منهم احضر شيء عن اكل يمني او انا. فكمان انهم هم يعني عندهم الشغف انهم يتعلموا عن ثقافتك وعلى قيمك وعلى حياتك كشخص جاي من ثقافة أخرى لتعيش معهم وبينهم، فهم جدا كمان شغوفين أن يتعرفوا على الآخرين.
مم. والتجربة في الأخير يعني كيف كان تقييمك لها من ناحية استعمالهم للغة العربية، تعلمهم للغة العربية؟ يعني هل آه، كمبتدئين يعني أصبحوا يعني يقدروا يستعملوا اللغة العربية في التواصل، ولا في التعبير على حاجاتهم؟ كيف كانت التجربة من هذه الناحية، يعني من ناحية النتيجة؟
يس. كما تعرف مثل كذلك تعليم وتعلم اللغة الإنجليزية كذلك في مجتمعاتنا أو في اليمن، كثير من الأحيان الفرصة اللي يمارس فيها المتعلم تعلم اللغة والحديث باللغة واستخدام اللغة يكون أكثر الوقت في داخل الفصل. لكن إذا
مم.
خارج الفصل تكون اللغة الأم هي اللغة السائدة. ففي اليمن
مم.
مثلا يخرج الطالب من الفصل ويسمع كله بالعربي باللهجة اليمنية. في أمريكا كمان نفس الكلام، يعني أنت تدرس لغة عربية في داخل الفصل ثم تخرج خارج الفصل، واللغة السائدة هي اللغة الإنجليزية إلى حد كبير. فتحتاج أنه بعض الأحيان تتعرف على بعض الأصدقاء اللي يتكلموا اللغة لغتهم الأم. وكان في برنامج كذلك في الجامعة يعمل على أن يبني علاقات ما بين الطلاب اللي يتكلموا اللغة، مثلا اللغة العربية واللغة الإنجليزية، بحيث أنهم يلتقوا ويمارسوا اللغة لمدة 30 دقيقة أو ساعة. وهذه تكون ممارسة شوية حرة، معناه
Mm.
انه مش بالضروره هناك منهج، وانما يتعرفوا على بعض ليكونوا اصدقاء الى حد ما. وهذه الصداقات تنمو انه كيف يمارسوا اللغه مع بعض. هذه كمان كانت تجربه متميزه، انه
Mm.
للطلاب انفسهم انهم يعني يمارسوا اللغه العربيه مع متحدثي اللغه العربيه.
Um, that's really very interesting, and thank you so much for sharing this very important experience, because we hear a lot about teaching English in our contexts, which is foreign or um, second language context. But as I told you, never heard from someone who has actually taught Americans or other people, non-natives of Arabic. So I was very curious, and I think this is a very interesting experience that I would like to myself experience one day.
ان شاء الله.
As a teacher, of course, inshallah, yeah, to any non-native speaker of Arabic, I would like to try to teach them Arabic and see how it goes. So, yeah, thank you for sharing your experience.
Sure.
So, you graduated with your master's in TESOL from Illinois University. Now, what I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, usually, uh, you go back after the Fulbright?
That's a requirement, but if you
Do
go,
you have to do that? Do
that's a
you? It's a
that's a
requirement. So
it's a
did you go
requirement.
back? I don't know. Did you go back and then went back to the United States, or you stayed there since you finished your studies there?
So what happened is during the second year of a master's degree in the US, they allow you to start applying for a PhD degree, and that's what I did.
Okay.
I applied, though I haven't finished yet, but you apply because the application for PhDs start like almost a year before. So you start in August and you apply the previous September or October. So it's
Okay.
almost like 10 months in many cases, but some
Mhm.
programs go a little bit shorter. So
Mhm.
then you apply, I got the admission, and then when I finished my Fulbright, I reached out to Fulbright and I said, I have a PhD admission and I would like to continue, and they were fine. And that's where you start a PhD program and they're okay.
Okay. So now you are studying PhD at the University of Illinois. What's the field of your PhD there? TESOL? Or
Sure.
is there something specific there in TESOL that you are doing research on? What's your research about?
Sure. Just a small correction. I'm finishing a PhD at Southern Illinois University, Capone,
Southern
where I
Illinois.
started masters. Yes.
Okay.
So I started there, and I did language literacies and culture. And as you can
Okay.
see, culture is there, and language literacies, that's like reading and writing. But
Mhm.
that was my program. And the way the program structured is you take up to 3 years, you take classes, and those classes are in theories in the area you are learning. That's like language literacy and culture and research. So those are three major areas of classes. You finish the classes, you take a prelim exam, and the prelim exam is different from a university to another, from a college to another, or programs. The way it's structured in the program where I did my PhD and finishing there, it's you have in-class exams and take-home exams. You come to the class, you take 4 hours, you have a question or two, you are required the number of pages, you finish in 4 hours, you come second day, you do the content area, and then the third day you do research methodology. So those
Mhm.
are three exams in classroom. Each one is 4 hours. You
Right.
you pass them. They give you a take-home exams either for 2 or 3 weeks. And again, this structure can be different from a program to another program. You submit the take-home exam, you pass that, and then you start writing the proposal for your dissertation. You do that, you submit it. I mean, you have a committee, you have an advisor, you submit the proposal, they discuss the proposal with you. Good, they give you approval, you then move to collect data and finish your program.
Mm. Okay. Now, your experience as a lecturer,
Hmm.
so teaching at US universities, you
Hmm.
talked to me about studying at or studies in the university system in the United States. Now, if
Hmm.
you can briefly talk to me about um, teaching
Sure.
in the American higher educational system.
Yes. One of the features of the educational system here in the US, after you pass your prelim exam, you have something called for J1 visa, that's like coming for the Fulbright. There is
Yeah.
something called academic training. You have up to 36 months where you can accept a full-time job, and that's considered for you academic training. And that's what happens with me. When I finished the prelim exams, passed the prelim exams, passed the discussion and the approval of my topic for dissertation, I was applying for full-time jobs, and I was hired at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, as this is my full-time job as a lecturer here at the Department of Linguistics. I teach academic writing to undergrads and grads and multilingual speakers. And that's also another key of the educational system here in the US. International students, when they come here to U of I, which is the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, they take, if you have the TOEFL test and the grade, that's good. And if not, there is a test here, a placement test. You take it, and then you have a specific grade, and then they ask you to take academic writing classes.
Mm. Mhm.
Because as you said, like when you are coming from a different educational system, coming into the US, academic writing is a big practice of your
Sure,
classes as
sure.
undergrad or grad. I mean, you can imagine if you're doing master's or PhD, then you're writing for publications, you're writing for conferences, you are publishing, you're doing a lot of writing. So,
Mhm.
and that's where like I teach academic writing to undergrads, and they learn the academic writing that meets the expectations and the audience in academia and academic institutions, say in the US, writing
Mhm.
short papers and doing, for example, annotated bibliographies, how to select a topic, how to search a topic, how to use the database of the university library to find reliable sources. And that's also a big thing. And to be able to do all of that, you need to take those classes to practice, to get feedback so you can continue growing. And as you know, so academic writing and teaching academic writing was also a part of my master's and PhD training. And that's
Mhm.
also where it is.
So this is your experience with teaching, of course, and
Yes.
now looking at, of course, the page, of course, I've come across your LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and as always, I'm very fascinated and interested by success stories. And looking at your LinkedIn, I was very impressed by your activities. You are very active, especially academically and in terms of research. So I've seen, for example, that you are interested in technology, in VR, in
Mhm.
virtual teaching, virtual learning, and virtual reality. So, since you have started, of course, teaching and at the same time doing research, what have been your interests in the United States there now?
Sure. So since I started the PhD program, I was most of the time focusing on the idea of technology and language learning and teaching. And I still
Mhm.
remember like the first topic, I was writing a proposal, and a proposal for a conference. It was about information and communication technology and language teaching and learning. And that was like
Mhm.
a few years ago. And as you said, like as you mentioned, from my LinkedIn or from my uh, faculty page here at the University of Illinois, I have been active as a researcher. I did co-published two journal articles, two conference proceeding, a book chapter, and two
Yeah.
book entities. And all of that comes as a collaboration. You collaborate with faculty, with colleagues. Somebody have an idea, and you start that idea where you start collaborating to write a manuscript together and to do a project together. But also, one aspect is like taking enough research classes that helps you to thrive. I know
Mm.
most of the times that's a key thing. Taking one, two, three, four classes might not be enough. They can help you to start, maybe to finish, to start your research, maybe to finish your dissertation. That's good. But that might not be sufficient to continue succeeding and thriving after you finish your PhD. And I think you got a chance to look at my page. I took more than 8 research classes in quantitative and
Wow.
qualitative, because again,
Mm.
if you need to thrive, you really need to invest a lot of energy taking research classes, exposing yourself to different methodologies, and being able to do research in those areas at some point. Maybe for my dissertation, for example, I'm doing a VR and ESL teachers. I'm asking the
Mm.
teachers in the US who are teaching English at intensive English programs about their experience with VR, to what extent they are familiar or using VR. Okay, that's for my dissertation. But also, when finishing my PhD and then continue my research after the PhD, I see I'm already having an agenda of moving forward with research. And one
Mm.
of them is to do something called factor analysis. And factor analysis is one area of research into the VR, where I can do and conduct factor analysis for research tools. So that's also a key. Taking enough research classes, practicing academic writing, collaborating with others, learning from others, having a mentor to do academic writing, and presenting with them. I have presented like more than almost like 25, around 25 to 30 presentation at national, international conferences, big conferences like TESOL. I know you mentioned
Mhm.
to me, like in some other conversations, you have been to TESOL twice. I have been presenting at TESOL like for several times. And then you learn how to go to these big gatherings, professional gatherings, learning from others, but also sharing what you learned. And that's an experience. And the key thing is everybody is capable to do that. And that's what I would like also to to have as one of the messages from the podcast is, if you believe you
Exactly.
can, you can.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this podcast, of course, is another um, occasion for you, for me to share our experiences, because I believe that's the most important part of the teaching profession, is to hear from other teachers and professionals, and get their experiences and point of views, because in one way or another they can relate to your own experience and your own point of view, and perhaps to your own problems in the classroom,
Mhm,
and uh, solutions that you can bring. So
mhm.
what would be your advice to teachers of English concerning the use of technology? Because technology is becoming more and more the main tool used by teachers in the classrooms. Especially, I'm very interested, for example, in AI, in
Mhm.
artificial intelligence. I know that in the United States, this is becoming the thing. This is becoming something very important. So, what is something that you can tell us about that, please,
Sure,
from your experience and research, technology and teach and learning English?
sure. So the most important thing for teachers always is take one small step.
Mhm,
That's a key thing. Sometimes when we think of technology, we think of that big thing. But
mhm,
sometimes say it's just take a small step. For example, if if someone hasn't been using, for example, Kahoot in the classroom, give it a try.
mhm. Yeah.
If you don't know how to do that, ask a colleague. Let a colleague maybe for the first time show you how to create a Kahoot for an activity in the classroom. Give it a try, use it, reflect on that. Was it a good experience? What made it not successful? How you can improve it? Ask students. Those are all of the data, your experience, and asking students. That's a key aspect. Attend sessions, professional development that related to areas where you would like to explore. Uh, don't try to overwhelm yourself. Like for
Mhm,
what you said, like for example, the interest in AI. That's great. What area in AI? For example, AI and academic writing. So if there is any webinar, any social like social professional aspects or gatherings or conferences where they are talking about those sessions or those topics, I would encourage the teachers to go and explore. Always try to be open to try a new thing, no matter what small, how small it is. And also having a plan. For example, for this
mhm.
year, it's going to be the technology, the AI with academic writing. I will try 2 or 3 programs the entire year. That's fine. Try to use it like in the areas where you don't need a lot of preparation because you have told that topic multiple times. Now you are familiar with the content, but how to move the content into technology. Technology is not meant to replace teachers, and technology is not teaching. Let me repeat that again, because
Mm,
sometimes that get us a little bit not clear. Technology is not teaching. Technology is a tool
mhm.
to help with teaching. Technically, like using, for example, YouTube or whatever. This is a simple one. Using YouTube in the classroom for 30 minutes, that's not teaching. That's
No,
not technology integration. No.
sure,
Yeah. But you can have a 5 minute, 7 minute, 10 minutes like YouTube video with an activity. Students can watch the activity, do the activity, immerse, and then have a discussion. The same 30
sure,
minutes can be 10
sure.
minutes of video, like some notes or an activity, 10, 15 minutes of students discussion in small groups, and then 5 7 minutes of reflection or a debrief activity. So that means technology is not teaching. So it's a tool. And that's an aspect. So small steps, that's a key thing. Put a plan, go to professional development webinars and so on, and keep reflecting and trying new things. I think that's a
Mhm.
key.
Yeah. So in the context of technology, of course, I'll come back, of course, to AI and ask a hypothetical question there. You
Yeah,
said technology is not teaching, but what do you think? And I always like to ask this question to teachers to sometimes tease them and say, do you think that AI in the future, and I don't mean necessarily the near future, is going to replace teachers? Now, some of them tell me that can never happen. Some say, yeah, to some extent. Some say, yeah, it will happen. What do you think of that? You
sure.
personally, how do you see AI coming?
I'm always open to new perspectives. So maybe at this time, with the idea of self-learning, it's in coming in progress. And as you know, there are like big websites. They offer like short courses, or even the universities are moving some programs into online
Yeah.
because people are doing self-learning.
Mhm.
At this point,
Self-learning and self-paced learning.
yeah, and even self-paced learning. Yeah, that's
Mm.
that's just at this point. What would
Mm.
happen in 10, 15 years? I am open to new perspective to what would happen in that time. But at least at this point, the human interaction is valuable.
Yeah.
And that's a key.
Yeah.
That's what I still see will continue to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, you can take a class online, but that's one end. And interacting with another human being, and that's a teacher, peers, students, classmates, it what brings those experience alive.
Mhm.
And that's a
I
key.
I
Yes.
believe that too, especially in the short term. We don't know about the future. We are just
Mhm.
like imagining what this is going to be like, but in the
Mhm.
short term, definitely. And I think that we have learned this lesson with the COVID-19.
Mhm.
A lot of people, of course, thought that um, once things moved online, they will never go back to in person. But I've noticed that people were very eager to return to in person,
Mhm.
and the online thing was not of course something permanent. Of course it helped a lot during the COVID-19 situation, but
Mhm.
once that situation was over, people didn't want to stay in that, in that they wanted to go back to uh, the human experience. I guess
Mhm.
it's the same if, for example, I was in the US or you were here in Algeria, we would do this podcast face to face. It's
Mhm.
just the technology is a tool, as you said, bringing us tonight together, millions of miles away, because that makes it easier for
Mhm.
you to talk to me or me to talk to you at such a distance of continents. Yeah, so I definitely understand your perspective there
Mhm.
concerning AI and the future of AI
Yeah.
and the future of teaching. So, um, in the my last question, or before the last question, how does Abdul Samad um, look at the future? What are your future projects? What are your hopes for the future once you finish your PhD, inshallah? And yeah, what are you what do you want to work on in terms of your research, etc.? How do you see the future of English in the Arab world and in Yemen?
Sure. Thank you. I mean, with the idea of future, I see, I mean, I will continue as my line of research in technology, VR, and English language teaching and learning. At some point, when uh, at some point today in future with research, you can add another line of research that's related to technology or language learning and teaching. And I see myself continue growing professionally,
Mm.
intellectually, and do more research, do more publications, but also those publications are also more related to my experience teaching academic writing, business writing, and so on. I hope for English language teaching in Yemen and the Middle East in MENA area is to continue evolving, because as you know, in teaching and learning, it's never a stop. It's never an end. It's always evolving. Excuse me. And that's a key thing. Like, I hope the way of teaching, learning, and learning English in Yemen continue to be more proficiency based. It's the grammar is good, but also how to add the communicative aspects where
Sure,
you're able to use the language. That's a key thing.
sure. So my last question to you, I always like to ask this question to my guests at the very end is, what is your advice to young people who are watching or listening to this podcast and would like to have a piece of advice on their path towards the future,
Mhm.
to their um, how to be successful the same way you are, that is having a scholarship or studying in the United States or finishing their masters or applying for a PhD and doing research or teaching at a university, which uh, has been your new dream, as you said. What is your
Mhm.
advice to young people?
Sure. I mean, it's simple, but it's deep. First one is dream big.
Mhm.
You should have big dreams. That's a key thing. Number two, have a strategic plan. What will take you to your dream goals is a strategic plan with a vision, clear vision. Number three, never give up. Keep it up, no matter how slow you're moving. If you are on the right direction, you will arrive. Number four, continue learning and improving your skills and see any opportunity as a way to be a better version of yourself. Those are few sentences. They mean a lot. To me, they mean almost 35 years of experience as a learner, a teacher, and I believe in them. But it takes a long journey to continue diving into all of those meanings which I just shared.
Thank you very much, Abdul Samad. I'm sure that the people who are, especially the young people who are listening or watching this, will definitely take into account and have these pieces of advice, something that would guide them in the future, but also hopefully um, your success story, everything that you have shared with us today, will help them build that vision, as you have said, for a future in wherever they are trying to pursue and achieve in terms of objective and goals. because that's the objective and goal of our podcast is, of course, to listen to and share as many experiences as possible with young people so that they have inspiration, they have a beacon to follow. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing all your experience, for the pieces of advice, valuable pieces of advice that you have given at the very end of this podcast. Last word before we finish, Abdul Samad, is yours.
You are very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun to meet and to share some of our thoughts together. And I cannot wait to see where the podcast will go in so many years. Thank you.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Abdul Samad. Perhaps we'll have another episode where we talk about a very specific topic
So,
concerning teaching English and learning English, VR, technology. Perhaps we'll have another episode, inshallah. This is only the beginning, hopefully. Thank you very much, Abdul Samad. And I'll see you, inshallah, in the near future. For you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. If you are listening to this podcast on a streaming service, an audio streaming service, or on YouTube, watching this podcast on Facebook or on LinkedIn, I'll see you in the next episode, inshallah, with a new guest, new experiences, and salam.